Welcome to Mondays with Michelle, where every week we share real stories of hope, healing, and faith. I'm Michelle, and together we'll meet incredible people whose journeys will encourage your heart and inspire your walk with Christ. I'm so glad you decided to spend your Monday with me, and I hope this week's episode is the fuel you need to help you begin your week. Welcome back to Mondays with Michelle, another week that we can do amazing things. And we're going to learn today from a special guest named Christian. And I will tell you how I met Christian. I had a friend that referred me to him in a networking business group, and he had started a mobile coffee business and got my interest. We connected, and he has an awesome story. So Christian, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Christian Pfeiffer. I'm the founder of More Than a Cup, which is a mobile coffee catering business here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We service weddings, baby showers, corporate expos, basically anywhere that you can get a cup of coffee. And our goal is truly to be, as it is in the name, to be more than a cup of coffee, to be a service to people, to show the light that has been brought upon me by my faith and by the people in my life who are other fellow Christians, and just kind of bringing that light to other people and showing love in a time where I think there's a lot of darkness in this world, and kind of spreading that and spreading hope and building connections with people in the Charlotte area and in the surrounding areas we'll get to work in.
Yeah. And I love the smell of coffee, but I don't drink it. But it's amazing how you're using coffee to change people, to change the community. But we're going to get into your story so everybody kind of knows, like, it didn't just happen. You had a coffee business. So tell us, I think it started back in your childhood. Let us know what happened.
Yeah. So my childhood was, pretty typical. We grew up in the suburbs, relatively nice house from what I thought. And, went to school, did everything that normal kids did, played in the cul-de-sac, had a great time. And so when I was 10 years old, both of my parents divorced, and my dad lost his job. My dad lost his mother, obviously, lost my mom in the divorce, put in a situation where we had to kind of go back and forth. So we were with mom during the week and my dad on the weekends. During that time, I'm kind of glad and not glad it happened in a sense, because I think it defined a lot of who I am today. But my dad lost his job and everything there from the '08 crisis kind of, came up to him there. So he not only, worked a corporate job, he lost that, but he was also getting into real estate, and similar to a lot of people at that time, he, kind of got in at the wrong time, and he over leveraged himself. He bought, I don't even remember how many houses. I think my mom said almost 20 houses he had. So quite a few, and majority of those he was not able to sell. The ones that he did sell, he sold for under market, under what the market value was that he bought it at. So he, he's basically been in debt his whole life because of that situation. I just saw what situation my dad was in. I saw what situation my mom was in. My dad was obviously struggling, and my mom was now basically a single mom. She had all of us during the week. She had to take care of us. He didn't have anything. He didn't pay child support. So it was her going to work. She was a director of nursing. So she was very successful in her role. But I just, got that work ethic from her. I got, like, if you work hard, you can figure things out. She worked hard. We were in a tough situation. She worked very hard, and she figured things out. She was able to take care of, there's 4 of us, 4 boys. So being able to take care of all of us throughout that situation was just really encouraging and really motivating. She was able to pour into each of us. 4 of us. Yeah.
So you were 10, you think you're around 10 when this happened. So let's talk about the divorce things. I know a lot of people, they go through that. I went through it myself. How, as a kid, do you remember, like, how that made you feel?
Yeah, as a kid, I was confused. I don't really remember too much of my feelings about that. I think I was young enough to the point where it was just kind of like, this is the way that it is now. I remember seeing the fights that would occur. I remember seeing stuff like that. I would sometimes leave my dad's house in Huntersville and drive down to my mom's and be at the bus stop in the morning at her place because the school was from her place. And I remember, going back to a house that we lived at, and I remember that house getting foreclosed on because my dad stayed there and my mom moved out. My dad couldn't pay the bills. That was our childhood house, and I remember how upset I was because when that happened, we had to move schools, and all the friends that I had at one school were not at the other school, and had to meet a whole new friend group. Thankfully, they all came back together, and I got to see those people again in middle school. I was just confused,
Right.
definitely
Well,
confused.
losing, I mean, your friends, like that's a big, and then your house. Like, and a lot of times I teach divorce care class actually. So I hear all kinds of stories, and a lot of people are worried about their kids. Like, how is this affecting the kids? And it really
Yeah,
does. Like you just said, had to move a school and you're back and forth with mom and dad. And a lot of times the kids don't understand and they didn't do anything wrong, but they're, getting the
yeah,
consequences of it.
yeah.
So,
I think it didn't affect me too much as a kid, but I think that created a story within me. And that created a story that nothing's promised. You can lose everything at one point. Saying like 2009, he had everything. He had his 4 kids. He had his wife. But wherever their relationship was at that time, and he had a house to live in. He had what people would have called the American dream. Some people may call it the American dream now. I think the American dream's been redefined to the next year. I mean, his mother's gone, his wife's gone, his kids are gone 5 days a week. He has no job, and I didn't even touch on. I mean, he went to a point where he was living with his sister. And there was another point where he wasn't able to live with his sister, and he was living in a tent in the back of a house that somebody allowed him to stay at. And in this house, there was a hole in the wall where I think he had said that something had like exploded in the house, whether it was like a washing machine or whatever it was. There was literally, I remember this, a gaping hole in the side of the house, the cockroaches running throughout this house, and everything was just absolutely, disgusting, covered in grime. And the guy said, "Hey, I will allow you to stay here, but as you start getting your feet up again, what I want you to do is rehab this house." And so my dad was working at Starbucks and starting to get paychecks, and little by little he was cleaning that house to the point where now we weren't staying in a tent outside the house. We were staying in a tent inside the house because the house had AC, but it was still so gross that you didn't want to sleep anywhere outside of that tent.
wow, what the memories. Look at the memories. But that
Yeah,
says something for your dad, like to lose everything, but he's trying. Then you see
right,
him taking the steps and trying. So
right.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of encouragement I got from that. A
Hmm.
lot of encouragement. Again, like I want to touch on the story first. Like the story that I think that I got, and I don't think I got over it until recently, was you can lose anything in a snap, but also like I wanted to take the safe route. And I think from 10 years old on, if you look at where I was in school, I feel like I performed pretty well, and that's because I tried so hard. Because I was like, I need to get a good job. I need to go to a good school. I need to get a good safe job that no matter what condition the economy's in, this job is going to be stable. And that was the way that I thought. And that was the way I went to school. Like I was like, I got to make sure every teacher likes me because who knows what those teachers would, advocate for me later. And with in the grades, and then with college applications and all that stuff down the line. And I ended up going to school for 4 years for civil engineering, worked in civil engineering for 2 years, and I still had this story, and I had like this almost mentality like I don't ever want to be like my dad. As kind of harsh as that sounds, as sad as that sounds, as sad as it sounded when I finally told him face to face, like, Dad, I love you, love everything about you, but I don't want to live my life the way that you have. And that was something that truly brought tears to my eyes. And same thing for him, but it was just letting go of that. And I think that came all the way back from when I was 10 years old, all the way forward. And it's just crazy how things move along with you and in your lifestyle. And so,
Right. You never forgot it. So from 10
right.
years old, you had that. And I know God brings us through every situation for a reason. So, like, you saw all that, you lived all that, and that's why you knew I'm not going to go that route. And you really pursued. So, civil engineering, that's a hard degree to get into, isn't it? Or was it
Yeah,
not for you?
it was it was difficult for me. It was difficult for me. Like, I tried extremely hard throughout high school. My goal was to get into NC State. I didn't get into NC State. I got into Charlotte, which my whole family went to Charlotte. So I was trying to be a chain breaker and go to the next, go to the next, the next school. I never got in. So Charlotte was a lot easier to get into, and honestly, like, the degree was difficult, especially as you got further down the line.
And to graduate, like to, I mean, that you're smart. Like, there's no way I would have graduated with that. So that, I mean, that your dad had to be proud, like to see
Yeah.
how far and look what you've done, like, wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think he was proud, and I think it's really cool now. I got to work an event with him this past weekend. So he was working it with me in my business, and like, I think I got a lot of the business route from him because he tried his hand in business and he tried that. He might not have done it the right way, but like, he loved it, and he loves like seeing me now pursuing this business and being able to create with this, and with me. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna take a little bit more um conservative risk, but business inherently is risky. It's something that you go out on your own and you find work and you make it happen. So it
Right.
was really cool for him to work with me this past weekend, and now he's like, oh wow, I'm proud of him for doing this.
Yes, and a good connection time. So I think you told me before, I don't know if your dad brought it up or you brought it up, y'all went to some program
Right.
that helped both of you. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's called the Landmark Forum. I'm not sure if it's still running. I think it is. But we went there in Atlanta. My dad told me about it when I was 16. Um, which, for me, my mom was kind of chirping in my ear, you don't need to go to these self-help programs, because self-help was such a, it was such a weird thing early 2000s up until, I think 5-10 years ago. Really, like, voodoo. Why are you going to go to a self-help seminar when inherently, like, I mean, they've helped a lot of people. So we went to this seminar, and the goal there was people who were coming there who had a divorce, who were former NFL players and were still trying to figure out what life is after the NFL. There was 16-year-old me, whose dad invited him, and I'm like, all right, I'm just coming to see what this is. Especially at that time, I'm like, oh, dad's inviting me to another thing, and there's people who are just trying to just get better in life, just improve themselves. And this program really was like meant to figure out what your story is that's holding you back in your life. I think everyone at some point in your life has a story that formed when you were maybe a kid, similar to the story that I had with I don't think business could work. I don't think going out and doing that risk could work for me. And so, some people were figuring out stories that, that maybe they needed to forgive somebody who did a wrong to them. And maybe they were creating a story from that. So maybe it was just like, hey, you need to forgive somebody. They're holding this impact still on your life. And until you forgive them, you won't be able to live life to its fullest. Or maybe you have that story from your kid. Maybe you were sexually abused and that has carried forward. But for me, like, my story that I came to realize was I I let rejection be something that consistently determined my life. And I think it was just because, as somebody in school, one time you go out and you tell a girl or guy that you think they're attractive or you think whatever, and that first time for me, like, that first time I got rejected at school in kindergarten was something that was consistently showing up in my life. It was something that I was defining myself by. A story is a thing until you let it define your life. Then it becomes a story. And I was consistently defining myself as somebody who gets rejected. So whenever I would go to a new situation, whether that was, asking a girl out, or going and pursuing an opportunity, it was, I'm probably going to get rejected this time around. And it was creeping up. I mean, and time again, I was lining myself up for failure. Honestly, that truly like transformed my life at an early age, at 16 years old. Ever since then, I like I told you when we talked before, like I went and we had a presentation the next week at school. I went in there and I was like, I don't care what anybody says, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm going to do this to the best of my ability, and if it's the best thing ever, it's the best thing ever. Went in there, best speech I'd ever given in my life. My teacher was like baffled, gave me like 102. Somehow got extra credit on it, and I was like, all right. And then I think just from that time forward, like I had to obviously tell myself again, like I'm not defined by my stories. I'm not defined by my stories. I'm not somebody who gets rejected. Rejection happens. That has popped up in my life time and time again. So whenever I go into a situation and maybe I'm chasing a new client in the business, or I'm, just in that next venture and somebody says no, it's like, okay, they said no. Maybe why did they say no? How can I improve for the next time? Not I got rejected, I kind of fall apart from that. And I think previously in my life, before the Landmark Forum, I did that. And now I've just been on this self-help uh, journey where I've been reading books and listening to podcasts and doing all that. And that's like all my free time that I'm not doing something else is doing that, because it's just had such a huge impact on me.
Wow. And you, well, especially your dad, he didn't have to go to this class or seminar or whatever, but he wanted to go to get better. I mean, I'm sure
Absolutely.
that's why he went and then took you, and now look how that changed your life. So you can
Yeah.
tell your dad wanted to do something to make changes. And amazing, at 16 is when you went, but you're still practicing those principles today, you
Yeah.
know, with reject. We
Yeah.
all get rejected. We all
We do. We do. But yeah, and it's crazy. Like it's almost laughable. In that, seminar, people were laughing. We're laughing. Like the thing that had destroyed their, maybe destroyed a piece of their life for years, or had caused so much anxiety, so much pain in their life. Once they realized it, they were laughing. Their release was laughing. They're like, I really define my life by what uh, Kiera said when I was 5 years old. I define my life by what something that happened when I was 7, people were laughing. They're like, wow, and because you had so much relief,
Mm-hmm.
and laughter can be relieving. And the next day in the seminar, the person came in with a smile on their face when they might have looked depressed or looked sad, and it was really uplifting.
That's neat. And even like bitterness is the same. Like if you are bitter, it's like destroying you. It's just until you get rid of it.
Yeah.
So freeing for you. So how did your dad, like after this conference, you really found the answers and so much better? Did it really help your dad too?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped my dad. I think my dad at this time was similar to like, where I feel like I'm at right now. He's doing everything that he possibly could to improve his life, to better his life, because I mean, he truly was here, hit rock bottom, and was building this new version of himself. Like before my parents got divorced, he was super abusive towards my mom, super abusive towards my brothers. And I think after he lost everything, I mean, it humbled him. It
Mm-hmm.
truly, like, he went from where he thought he was, guys can get to a point where we think, we're super powerful or whatever it is, wherever this version of himself felt like he was, to go to the bottom. It crumbled him. It crumbled everything. And I think he could have caved, and I think he could have done a lot of things that would have been way worse. But instead, he became rooted in his faith, and he surrounded himself by men who were rooted in their faith, and he surrounded himself by books and by podcasts and by things that could really uplift him, with people who are speaking higher than what he was speaking of himself. And it's really cool now, because I remember my dad bringing out a hanger and whipping my brothers or whatever, and the argument and the screaming and stuff. And now it's like it's very difficult for him to get angry, and he's constantly, and he used to like lock himself in rooms and just be grinding and doing his thing, and not really like focusing on the family and spending time with the family. And now it's now coming out of that, it was, how can I hang out with y'all? Like, what do you guys want to do on the weekend? Do you want to go camping? Do you want to go bowling? Do you want to do whatever? Like, how can we spend time together? We were telling him we wanted to spend more time. My mom was saying the same thing.
That's good. And we were talking about like he was down, and they say like when you're at rock bottom, all you can do is go up. All you can do is look up. Like God's
Right.
there. But sometimes people do have to hit that rock bottom before they're going to look up and get the help that they need.
Yeah.
But just hearing about your dad, I can tell he did everything to instill to get better, to be better. So that's amazing. And I can tell that's what you learned from him. So you have graduated for civil engineering, you have a job. So now, how did you get into coffee?
I feel like I'm still trying to figure out what the true story is. To start, I didn't really like coffee as of freshman year of college. Freshman year of college, I was drinking, energy drinks, or I might have had like a Frappuccino, like a Starbucks Frappuccino, which is like 90% sugar or 10% coffee. And then I kind of like gradually started working my way into drinking other drinks. And I think really like, senior year, I was having lattes, which is kind of what most people would get at Starbucks. What people did if they were going to do a check-in with a supervisor, or if they were going to go get with a friend, they would say, hey, let's go grab coffee. And we would do our coffee chats with our supervisors, and we'd go grab coffee together. So I tried a few different drinks there. But the biggest thing is I went and lived in this apartment complex, which I don't know if some people are watching have ever lived in a Northwood Raven apartment complex, but they all have baristas. They all have free coffee every morning, which you pay for it in your, in your rent. And I think I really learned to appreciate a little bit more of like the true coffee flavor. And, another aspect that I got is like, is the atmosphere of a coffee shop. I mean, there's people in there connecting after a workout. There's people in there who are connecting over coffee to, and this is kind of more outside of the apartment complex, but connecting over coffee for catching up if they haven't seen each other in several years. There's people who are out there who are doing business deals over a cup of coffee. Like an example for me, a supervisor telling her supervisee how they've been doing in their job over a cup of coffee. There's so many different aspects. And I looked at coffee. I worked in the service industry for 6 years, and I did civil engineering. So I was like, okay, so civil engineering kind of teaches you how to think. The service industry helps you with people, like being good with people and understanding people and just the hospitality aspect. And I'm like, God, how can I put what the skills that you've given me together? This is something that I prayed about for, probably 6 months. I was getting to a point with my job that I was at where we had this really cool, really big project that's, is going on now. And I was, sitting at a desk 10 hours a day. So again, I was continually praying. I was like, God, give me that opportunity that can kind of somehow mix these two together. And I'd seen this concept just constantly popping up throughout the United States. We actually had one come to our office, a coffee cart come to our office in Charlotte. And I talked to the CEO of that company. I was like, hey, like, what does this look like? How are you guys doing? And he's like, we're killing it. He's like, we're booking out for next year. This is a new concept in Charlotte. I don't see a lot of people doing this. I feel like I can learn this. And I've got, I've got the grit. I'm going to put my head down and figure it out. So, I spent a year kind of studying coffee on YouTube University through podcasts, coffee shop or coffee cart or coffee truck. Which one do we want to do? There's different budget variations for each one. Coffee shop, I'm going to spend all my life savings and maybe it works out. Coffee truck, I'll spend half of my life savings and maybe it works out. Coffee cart, I'll spend a quarter of my life savings and we'll figure out if it works out. I was like, all right, let's try this. And then maybe we work our way that way. I felt confident enough that I could do it. And then I literally had one of those, miraculous moments that I've only heard about and had never witnessed myself. And I was looking at my calendar. I've got this huge calendar that has the whole year. And I saw our trip for Europe that was already pre-planned. And a date just hit me like that. And it was like, that's the day you're leaving your job, and that's the day you're putting your 2 weeks notice in. And it was 4 days after that happened. 4 days. So from 4 days there to the day that I was putting in I put in a 1 month notice. It's more of, I love what coffee brings together. It brings together people, and it's a tool for so many different things in life. I think coffee is just such a cool thing.
Right.
And I love the flavor of it too. So, it's more of what coffee's about, but the fact that it tastes good and the fact that it's a craft in itself, and we can provide great coffee for people in Charlotte and the surrounding areas.
Yeah, that's so neat. And when you're saying about people want to do this with coffee or that, I actually got an email today and someone said, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. You want to get a coffee?"
Yeah,
So people do that to meet up for sure. Yeah.
absolutely.
So how scary? I mean, were you really scared to take that step? Because from civil engineering to starting coffee, like what gave you the strength, the power, like I can do this? Like, was there anything? Like there
Yeah, I
might
mean,
be somebody out there that's saying, I've been thinking about doing this, but I like with me with the podcast, I had the idea. I felt like God was saying in January, you really need to do that. And I'm like, no,
mm,
I don't know nothing about it. And how do I start it? Like, what do I like? It's too hard. And then I kept getting that urge, like, you need to do this. And so
yeah,
then in the spring, I met someone and I'm like, hey, have you ever helped with a podcast? Like, I knew I couldn't do it myself. But it's a process. So was there anything that happened that you knew, okay, I can do this?
yeah. I think for me, it was like I did a year of research leading up to it. Like,
Oh,
I'm very thorough. Like, I was
mhm.
very thorough leading up to it. I was like, okay, I know 90% of what I need to do, and I think I can do 90% of it. I think it was faith at that point. Like, I had never had something like that happen. I've never had like what I would say God speaking to me type moment happening, and to see a date just that date just appear. I was like, God's telling me I have to do this. And not only that, but I went to a Bible study, a men's Bible study that I was going to, and I actually got invited by somebody at my previous company to go to this Bible study. So it's kind of ironic. But we were reading the book of Matthew, and it was talking about Jesus in the wilderness. He was offered the city. He was offered the basically the world at one point. And I was like, I'm at this crossroad in life where I go this way in civil engineering, and I see a lot of money in my future. Like, I can be very well set up. My girlfriend, future, hopefully future wife, is taken care of. My family's taken care of, but I'm working 50, 55 hours a week. I am doing work that's at a desk. I'm probably going to lose. I was already starting to feel like my health was declining physically. I already felt like I was declining sitting there, because literally it's 10 hours a day sitting at the desk. I want to get up and move around and do that and connect with people and bring business in. And I think, the beauty of the business that I was working with is most of our work was reoccurring. What do I look like in 10 or 15 years? I'm sitting in one of their desks. How does everybody look like where I'm sitting around? Do they look anxious? Do they look frustrated? Do they look happy? There's this scary monster standing on this side,
Mhm.
but behind that scary monster is is freedom, is opportunity, is connections, is something that I love doing, is adventure. And we can get the same type of opportunity on this side as we have on this side. We just don't know yet. And then once I saw that date pop up, I was like, I'm facing this monster because of what just happened. By faith, I'm going to face this. And I took that step and I walked that way, and the monster wasn't even there. Walked right
Mhm.
through him. So
And a lot
that's
of times you have to take that step. Like,
right.
if you know it's too scary, I'm not going to, then you wouldn't be where you are today. And I know even with, you have told me with your business, you're giving back by the roasting company that you're using. You want to talk about that? Like, even like you started the business, but you're still helping others too, even with supplying the beans.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, one of the big things that I want to do with our business is, as we grow, be able to, try to give back in as many ways as we can. Like, I've thought about doing like a prayer jar, and thought about making it truly like, the name's More Than a Cup. Like, what is our More Than a Cup we've kind of coined this like more than a cup moment. Like, what can our more than a cup moment be today? Well, how can we make somebody's day in that way? Whether that's praying over them or maybe giving up free coffees occasionally. But our roasting partner, they employ people in West Charlotte who sometimes, might struggle to get work elsewhere. And then another thing too is like, they're truly people first, and then coffee is something that they do. And I was like, this is exactly what I want this business to mean, just by the definition of what I said before. So I was like, I feel like this aligns so well. We went to 5 different roasters, and all those roasters, like, they've been on top of that ever since. Like, ever since we started working with them, people first has constantly popped up. Like, they lined up our biggest opportunity yet at Charlotte Douglas International Airport next week. Our roasting partner had put people first and saw where we were at in the business, and saw an opportunity for us, and went ahead and put our name in for it.
Wow. So you can see you took that step, and look how God's blessing. Like, you
Yeah.
didn't have to go get that. It's coming to you. So it's amazing. Amazing. So you have a wonderful story. I'm so glad that you shared, like,
Thank you.
where you were as a child, what you learned, now what you're doing. Yeah, that's what the podcast is all about, encouraging, inspiring. So I'm hoping someone heard your story today, and something you said inspired them maybe to start a business, or even like as a child, what you went through, the negativity. Maybe somebody needed to hear that. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Know you probably have coffee to make, so we got to let you go. If anyone has any questions, or you want to reach out to Christian, if you want to email me, mondayswithmichelle2911@gmail.com, I can get you his information. But thank you all for listening today, and we will see you next Monday. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank y'all. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you for joining me for Mondays with Michelle. If today's story encouraged you, please share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you have an inspirational story to share, or you would like to be a guest on the future episode, please send an email to mondayswithmichelle2911@gmail.com. See you next Monday.
Like and subscribe to Mondays with Michelle.